Mario Kart World has an identity crisis and quite frankly isn't a good Mario Kart game. I've done most of all I wanted to do in the game, so I'll spend the next few minutes talking about how my last few weeks have gone playing Mario Kart World. Call it opinions, call it a review, but either way, here we go. I pre-ordered my Switch 2 and a copy of Mario Kart World through Target, both of which came late, but Mario Kart World came a whole week after launch, while I got my Switch 2 like a day after launch. Because of that, I decided to start playing Pokemon Scarlet again to see how it ran on Switch 2, and I loved and defended Scarlet and Violet when they came out. I still defend them. They look really, really good on Switch 2, so I had a really, really good time replaying and refinishing Scarlet, so much so that when I finally got my copy of Mario Kart, I didn't want to play that until I completed the Pokedex in Scarlet again. So while maybe that is more a plus to Scarlet, during that time of Mario Kart sitting on my shelf, I tried to be spoiler-free, but that's obviously not, super possible in the modern era. My best friend had been playing World since day one. Hi, Mike. And I heard bits and pieces through him, and honestly, the early takes weren't that good, even coming from him. He warned me that, quote-unquote, there's something you're going to hate about Grand Prix, and boy, was that an omen. For context, I grew up on Mario Kart DS and Mario Kart Wii, and while I'm nostalgic for Mario Kart DS and embrace the tomfoolery of Mario Kart Wii, I recognize that Mario Kart 8 / Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is easily the best game in the series. It's been a few months since I've played Deluxe, but I have no complaints about that game. It is the most polished, the most balanced, and the most replayable Mario Kart game. And I would say, in my opinion, quote unquote, but I don't think that's really an incorrect sentiment in the slightest. With that said, I went in with super high expectations despite what I had heard through the grapevine, and those expectations weren't even close to being met. I'll go in order of modes that I played, and I will then try to justify my opinion of this game having an identity crisis. I started with Grand Prix, seeing as though it is the classic Mario Kart mode, and the mode I enjoyed the most in previous Mario Kart games. The first thing I will say, and this is the highest praise I can give this game, and it's that this game is absolutely gorgeous. Course by course, I think the courses look the best they ever have, which isn't a surprise considering we're on the newest piece of hardware, but course design and format aside, these courses look fantastic and made me ooh and ah several times, even on subsequent runs through the exact same course. For example, I think it's Wario Shipyard that has crazy waves of water, and for one, that water looks fantastic, and otherwise the whole level physics just made my jaw absolutely drop. We didn't have that technical capability on Deluxe, so damn, the courses look really, really good. But that's where my highest praises end, because even though the courses look good, their utilization is extremely poor. It's now been 2 months, so I'm not afraid of saying this, spoiler outright, but in Grand Prix mode, you get 1 course of 3 laps. You get 2 courses of 2 highway laps and 1 track lap. And then you end with, I'm pretty sure, a 1 highway, 2 track lap combo, but I wasn't able to pick up on a super defined pattern. And this is where the game starts to have an identity crisis, because in Mario Kart World, a game that took so much pride in being the first open world Mario Kart, why are there highway parts to a Grand Prix? Why am I driving 2 laps to get to Toad's Factory and then only doing 1 lap of Toad's Factory that is super duper short? Why are highways part of a disjoint Grand Prix mode where the next map is being reloaded every single time? We'll talk about that in a few, but it would make more sense to have highways to be laps in Knockout Tour, but even then, nobody wants to play these intermittent tracks. Exactly 11 years between Mario Kart titles, and so much emphasis is put on these highways. Why? Along with the graphics being my highest praise, the Grand Prix design is my harshest criticism, by a little bit. I did come across some good quality of life improvements that I thought I wrote down, but apparently I didn't. So as a good example of a small thing that got tweaked for the better, in Mario Kart 8, if you got, say, a single banana as an item, you had to hold down the item button to hold it behind you to protect yourself from shells as opposed to throwing it. So in World, they automatically spawn behind you, so you don't need to hold a button to like protect your bum. And I like that a lot. Again, there are other small things that got added that I like, but none game-breakingly like, wow, look at this. So for all of these small quality of life improvements, though, we have one big trade-off that literally almost made me turn off the game and quit within just a few hours. Yes, the course design is stupid of needing to go on highways in a Grand Prix, but at the very least, I can appreciate that the highways exist as something different, as a creative decision that just doesn't land. But this next criticism is one that I just cannot comprehend, and that's the controls, or more specifically, the drifting system. As I mentioned earlier, 8 and Deluxe are perfect as games, and with that, I love that you have complete and total control of your vehicle if you want it. When I'm drifting in 8 and in 8 Deluxe, it's snappy, it's controllable, it's perfect. And if you wanted more of a challenge to your drifting, you could ride a bike in those games, and that was fine. They got the job done. In World, however, from the moment I started the game, the drifting system made me want to throw my Switch 2 out a window, metaphorically. For one, why is the same control system not there? Why is the drifting different? You had a system that wasn't broken, so why fix it? You had a perfect system, so why change it? I cannot wrap my head around that. How is it different? I can't super explain it because I don't know the correct terminology from earlier games, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the drifting is like by default this inside drift where your driving path literally skews based on how you're drifting, even if you don't intend for it to do that. So, using a basic kart, that shouldn't be happening. Like I said, in Deluxe, in 8 and Deluxe, if you're doing it on a bike, it makes sense, but in a kart, it didn't do that. So this really just shouldn't be happening. There's so many times in the beginning of when I started playing that I would drift and I would fall off, or I would lose my in-race standing just because of how asinine the drifting is. I thought it might have been because I was playing as Waluigi, who doesn't have great handling, but when I switched over to Baby Peach, who has really good handling, the problem still persisted. It's not a character, it's not a kart choice, it's a design choice, and it literally made me want to stop playing. I got used to it, but even after a month of playing, it still gets me sometimes, and I only want the original perfected system, or the perfect 8 Deluxe system. Like, that drifting was on point, the control of your vehicle was on point, and I'll also note that the whole vibe to the game is like a smoother Mario Kart, which I can't really explain, but if you give it a shot, you'll know like exactly what I mean by softer. I would say it maybe isn't my cup of tea, but I think you all catch my, wait for it, drift at this point. And yeah. So I completed all 8 Grand Prix courses or circuits on all 3 default speeds. 50cc, 100cc, and a 150cc. 200cc isn't in the game, at least yet. My guess is that it's a DLC thing, which, if that's the case, it shouldn't be a DLC thing, because, 200cc was in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. But anyway, mirror mode also has to be unlocked, but I'll come back to that. Honestly, though, Grand Prix has a decent amount of difficulty, and a not insignificant amount of seasoning, if you will. Another big theme to this game is that the CPUs scale up to your talent, and I'm no pro, but I was pretty good at Mario Kart 8 and Deluxe, so it was pretty seamless to hop into World and hit tricks, hit drifts, and do all the little things that separate a kid from a seasoned Mario Kart veteran, and I don't think I ran away with a single course. Maybe more so on 50cc, but on 150cc, the CPUs are just on your tail the entire time. I talked to my friend about it, and we came to the agreement that as you go up in CC, the changes in CPU difficulty and difficulty overall get more dynamic. So in 50cc, you can be hitting every trick, and the CPUs read that, but their ceiling only goes so high. In 150cc, you can be hitting every trick, and the CPUs read that, but the CPUs can go trick for trick, item for item with you in 150. So a good way of wording it is, in other words, in 8 Deluxe, the CC is literally just the speed of the game, but in World, the CC is also the game difficulty. CPUs are not. 50cc is like low floor, low ceiling, while 150cc is like high floor, high ceiling. And I don't super have a problem with this, but when you can just choose a bad character and Kart combo and not hit tricks and then get attacked less, it feels like the game is rewarding poorer, quote unquote, gameplay as opposed to someone who is talented at Mario Kart doing all the right things, so to speak. So I don't love that, but it's a creative decision I would stand by, though I would hope they would change that in a future Mario Kart game in 11 years. Being able to set the computer's difficulty and let the CC be the speed of the games is like what I would prefer. That's how like 8 Deluxe worked outside of Grand Prix. It's just another thing that 8 and Deluxe did better, but like, okay, Grandpa, we get it. Let's move on. The next mode I played was Free Roam, or essentially the open world, and simply I was very unimpressed. The whole open world movement of modern games is like something we can talk about. I can take it or leave it. But when they announced it for Mario Kart, all I could ask is, why? I'm aware some racing games already do this. They're already open world, but it just didn't seem to make sense for Mario Kart, and it didn't end up making any sense at all. I went into Free Roam to try it, but also to mainly unlock all the different outfits for the characters, which, why is this not like Smash where you just click a button on the character select page to change the outfit? I support, unlocking the outfits, but like that also the character select screen is like, it's a little too noisy in my opinion. So, as opposed to you just in the character select screen, like all the outfits are separate, but that's like a nothing burger. So anyway, the identity crisis continues because this game makes no sense for an open world, and two, for a game to be so heavily marketed as an open world game, why is the open world so empty? Granted, yes, I will say it's cool that you can now explore these courses that we come to love, but now that we have the opportunity, it doesn't really feel like anything. Aside from exploration, there are outfits to unlock, which can be done in Grand Prix and Knockout Tour, but at least you can like cheese it in Free Roam. There are P-switches, there are Peach medallions, the latter two of which I did not do at all. Basically, they're just collectibles you find. My understanding is that P-switches are like little challenges you do, while Peach medallions are literally just collectibles. But the only thing you get out of doing the switches or collecting the medallions is mirror mode. And past mirror mode, you can get stickers, of which there are like 1,000. So like, I think this is Mario Kart World's like Korok seeds. But like, really? That's it? Not only is there nothing to do besides aimlessly explore these two things, but genuinely, even though I didn't do them, are there enough people who did do these that made the entire development of an open world worth it? My answer leans heavily toward no, so it's another creative decision that just doesn't land. I appreciate the idea of creativity, but when so much time was spent on this and we couldn't get 3 laps of Toad's Factory, like, Nintendo, what are we doing? I didn't do either of these tasks, so I didn't unlock mirror mode, but quite frankly, I never really cared for mirror mode, even on like Mario Kart DS and Wii, so I'm not going to go out of my way to justify Free Roam not going to go out of my way to do Free Roam just to play a mode that I don't really care about. It's kind of like they built the open world and then built the Grand Prix setup, and I have a problem with that. For one, it didn't make sense when you can just do Toad's Factory 3 times, but it reminds me a lot of how they did a battle mode or a balloon mode, I think in 8 or Deluxe. So balloon mode was just a course with balloons as opposed to a whole new map for balloon mode. So for context, I'm pretty sure in like Mario Kart DS, they made their own map for this balloon or this battle mode. But in 8 or Deluxe, they just make it the courses. So you're just racing again. And like it didn't really work. And that's kind of how I feel about this, that they're just trying to reuse like the asset of the open world to do Grand Prix, and it doesn't really work. It's lazy, and it affects the main gameplay, so for me, that's a really big loss for the game. At least in the balloon mode case, the mode is like a side mode, so I get not wanting to put a ton of resources to that, but like, this is open world affecting the gameplay of Grand Prix, like the main the main mode, and that's just really poor in my opinion. So that's that. Last but not least is Knockout Tour, and I'll say right away that this is a great idea for a mode, but I don't think it's perfectly executed. But I think that might personally be my hottest take in this video, so if you disagree, it's okay. If Grand Prix had a mode where after every race, a certain number of players were dropped, so you start with 24 in race 1, which, just briefly, the fact that 24 characters play in this game per race is almost like totally unnoticeable, besides like the first 10 seconds of the first race. But anyway, 6 get dropped, so in race 2 you have 18, and then you have 12 in race 3, and then you have 6 in race 4, with you essentially playing against 24 in race 1 down to 6 in the final, or roughly about that. If Grand Prix was like that, that's what Knockout Tour is. However, instead of disjoint races like Grand Prix, Knockout Tour is literally a tour of the Mario Kart world. There are 6 courses that you drive through, but instead of doing one race and loading into another like Grand Prix does, the races are continuous, only dropping you if you don't meet the be in 12th place by the next checkpoint type of criteria. With that said, since the races are continuous, we again don't play 3 laps of courses, but it actually kind of makes sense in this context, because for how long they make Knockout Tour, it would be a really long time to do 3 laps on every single course. So in this context, it makes sense. However, instead of finishing course 1 and immediately going into course 2, we again have this baloney of driving on a highway, and a long highway at that, before getting to the next course, only for the course to be like 1/4 of the entire checkpoint map, if that makes any sense at all. So like, again, lots of highway, not a lot of like course time. It's based on the open world, so I can see that it would be weird to be in Bowser's Castle only to be in Sky High Sundae like afterwards. So, you know, I understand having to have some highway, but like if they reduce the amount of highway, the whole thing just gets shorter. So like the highways kind of have to be long, but also you shouldn't want to be on highways that long. Like the amount of time in the courses should be longer, with the highways just being like kind of small. So it's a little painful. So also, to 3-star Grand Prix, you need to get first in each course, but in Knockout Tour, to 3-star, you need to get first in each checkpoint to get 3 stars. And this is a real pain to do if you intend to get 3 stars on each Knockout Tour and each CC. I would say that's not impossible, however, if you were able to build up a lead over time. And what I mean is, like, let's say I'm a certain amount of time ahead of second place. Let's say 15 seconds just for the purpose of this discussion. How the checkpoint system works is that your 15-second lead gets wiped away the second you cross a checkpoint. So you cross a checkpoint, and comparatively, the game will load everyone else within 5 seconds, even though you had like a 15-second lead over everyone. So you lost a significant lead just by crossing the checkpoint. And that makes Knockout Tour a real kick in the pants, I think. My idea would be the entire map is this ridiculously long 6 checkpoint map that you can get as far ahead as you can get, like being able to finish the tour before second place even finishes checkpoint like 5 out of 6. But like we talked about with Grand Prix, the difficulty dynamic makes that like impossible. Even if it was possible, the checkpoint system wiping those leads away makes it kind of silly. So speaking of difficulty though, holy moly, are the difficulty differences in CCs way more pronounced. For reference, I 3-starred all the Knockout Tours on 50cc first try, and then on 100cc I didn't get all 3 stars for all 8 maps, but my goal was to play through and win every Knockout Tour before deciding to go back and 3-star them. So I did all the 100cc ones, I won all of them, and I moved on to 150cc, and my goodness, the difference in 150cc Grand Prix and 150cc Knockout Tour is insane. Like I said, I at least wanted to win each 150cc Knockout Tour, but through the first 4 150 tours, first 4 150cc tours, I had to retry each one at least once because I couldn't even win. I appreciate difficulty. I appreciate difficulty scaling, but like I said earlier, it's not done in a good way. It's done in a way that's just painful and honestly makes it not that fun. I was already not enjoying Mario Kart World for a bunch of the reasons I mentioned. And I have Donkey Kong Bonanza sitting on my shelf. So after being in first place for the first 5 checkpoints, only to lose to random end of race tomfoolery, I got sick and tired and just shut it off. You're watching gameplay I took after that, but genuinely it's like way too damn hard. Knockout Tour is way too damn hard, but maybe I'll win one while recording gameplay for this video though. All in all, Mario Kart World has an identity crisis. Firstly, because of the balloon mode reason, where it feels like stuff was created and reused, but the reusing doesn't really work. Like it feels like they made the open world, then built the Grand Prix based on the open world, and like I said, that just doesn't work. Grand Prix should have been easier since you just load 4 different maps and do 3 laps instead of this random highway baloney. And speaking of Grand Prix having a problem, I think all 3 main modes have problems. Grand Prix, Free Roam, and Knockout Tour. They all have problems, and it makes none of them great, none of them the identity to Mario Kart World, so it kind of leaves Mario Kart World as a jack of all trades, master of none, and I believe that hurts the game. With that said, I don't intend on going back to this game anytime soon, like to the point that it actually kind of hurts me. For one, I'm a huge Mario Kart fan, and the games that I played growing up, I will defend those and Deluxe to the death, but this one, I just don't like it, and that makes me kind of sad. Disappointed and sad, given the lofty expectations it set for itself as a launch title, and the lofty expectations I had for it as a Mario Kart game, a series with pretty much all masterpieces, and that's the last thing I want to talk about, the context. In my opinion, the last Mario Kart is better, so this game technically feels like a downgrade even if it's visually a serious upgrade. If you're dying for a new Mario Kart like I was, I think this game is worth it. But I would implore you to find a way to play a little bit for yourself to make sure you're still dying for it. Not that I play a lot of 8 or Deluxe anymore since I have other things I want to play, but I'm far more likely to go back to that as a single player Mario Kart. I'll likely play some multiplayer with my friends, and maybe I'll find more passion in this game doing that, but a game's multiplayer experience shouldn't be what sells the game. At least, not a game like Mario Kart that's supposed to have a very rich single-player experience. I didn't mention it, but I was so enthralled with Deluxe that I did all the time trials, and I just don't feel the need to do those or collect all the stickers and do all the P-switches and all that. So, like, it kind of feels like it's overall less content that you actually want to do. Otherwise, for context, like, let's be real, this game was meant to sell Switch 2 units at launch, and prior to launch, it was the perfect launch title. It's been 11 years since the last Mario Kart. We're riding off the still continued success of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which, side note, have you seen how many units that game still sells a week? It's absurd. It's still like top 10 Nintendo games, which is like totally crazy. So Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is just this perfect overall single player and multiplayer experience for in general, but that makes Mario Kart World supposed to be like the overall perfect single player and multiplayer experience for people to adjust to the Switch 2. But in all honesty, I don't think Mario Kart World justifies the Switch 2. I was always gonna buy a Switch 2 at launch, not out of FOMO, but as a Nintendo fan, as a game collector, as someone who wanted a new Mario Kart, all that, I was gonna buy a Switch 2 no matter what. But prior to the Switch 2 launch, I defended this thing like crazy. I did and still do defend the price tag of this system and the game. But admittedly, I did tell people that if Mario Kart isn't a system seller to them, they shouldn't buy a Switch 2. Now, though, I have to tell people that Mario Kart World just straight up isn't good. And in my opinion, that's kind of sad. I don't regret buying a Switch 2, not in like the slightest. But it does feel like salt in the wound knowing that the #1 launch title, the most hyped game of the year, just wasn't it. It's a burden that I don't have to carry, but it does still take the wind out of my sails a little bit. This is not my final answer, but as a game, I give Mario Kart World an 8 out of 10. For someone playing Mario Kart for the first time, key being first time, this game will be an instant classic to them, just like Mario Kart DS was to me as a kid, or as Mario Kart 8 was to me when I started gaming again. The game is beautiful, and not knowing other controls or anything to compare this game to, this will be a Mario Kart that a new gamer, or at least a more open-minded gamer, will absolutely love. The one thing I will say to this, though, is that new gamers or kids aren't necessarily the core audience playing this game at launch or 2 months in. A huge talking point is the price of the Switch 2 and the game, and for that reason, most parents aren't buying a Switch 2 right now for little 8-year-old Johnny. The people playing this game right now are people like me, other adults who can afford the $530 plus price tag and can appreciate the difference from Switch 1 to Switch 2, and of course have likely played other Mario Kart games before this one. So all in all, it's not a bad game. It's a good game, maybe a great game, but it just doesn't do enough right, or at the very least doesn't execute its strengths well enough to, one, reach its lofty expectations as a Mario Kart, and two, justify the high price point. At this moment in time, I will continue recommending a Switch 1 and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe to people who ask, and for that reason, context and everything I've said taken into account, my final review of this game is a, drum roll, 6 out of 10.